Hello again, everybody. I have stepped away from the microphone for a bit and now I am back refreshed and ready to record the finish of this series that I have embarked on, the favorite 50 horror movies of all time. My personal favorite 50 horror movies that I've seen. So, again, it's favorite, not best. So, I know there are a few that people might get a little annoyed by the placing or even by the fact that they're not on here. But nonetheless, this is a personal thing. So, I am now in the top 10 and I'm ready to talk about my number 8 choice. This is a movie that I'd originally planned on not including because I didn't really think of it as a horror film, but it was ranked as a horror film by IMDb when I was trying to gather a master list of all the titles of all the horror movies that I'd seen and liked. And I saw this and I thought about it. Okay, yeah, I can see it. And I'm referring to Charles Laughton's only turn as a director, Night of the Hunter, starring Robert Mitchum as a preacher with hate in his heart and murder on his mind. This may not have supernatural elements, but it does have a kind of gothic horror feel in that it is set in the 1930s. You've got a kind of Depression era, small southern town Depression era feel to it. And it does concern a serial killer, a misogynistic serial killer, who is also, he has a poisonous charm. And he is after some loot that has been secreted away in a child's doll. And this child and her older brother are the offspring of a widow woman that Mitchum pursues and then marries and then kills. And one of the more interesting shots of a corpse in cinema history is the shot of her dead body under the water. It's not gross, it's just so eerie. And just when you think you've had all of Robert Mitchum's misogyny you can take, Lillian Gish shows up. And she, of course, is what we might call a badass granny, a badass older woman. And, well, she's not fooled by his line. And it's up to her to protect the children as well as some other children from the threat that Mitchum poses. So this unfortunately flopped at the box office so hard when it was first made back in the mid 50s that Charles Laughton never directed another film. And that's a tragedy because this film is so beautifully crafted. It's so well put together. Laughton could have had quite the career as a director if the public in the mid 1950s had just been smart enough to embrace this film. As it is, it has come down to us as a cult classic. It's now received a lot of the appreciation that it deserves. So if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Night of the Hunter. At number 7, another movie whose position within the horror canon is dubious. It's more science fiction, but considering that this movie is as close to a slasher film as anything that I would put on my list. And I refer to Alien because it is the story of an alien, a flesh-eating alien, indiscriminate about what it snacks on, loose in a spaceship full of engineers and scientists. And the suspense built up over the runtime is phenomenal. It's got a lot of good performances by character actors who never quite became stars. You have Harry Dean Stanton, Tom Skerritt, John Hurt, of course, actually gained a little bit of fame as the crew member, unfortunate enough to have the aliens burst to have the alien burst out of his belly while he's trying to eat a meal. So he doesn't have a lot of dialogue, but people remember him in this movie. And of course, this is the movie that introduced the world to Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, who at the time when I first saw this back in the early 80s, the film was made in 1979, but I didn't actually see it until it came on HBO. Why? Because I was 10 years old and was not allowed to go with my folks to see an R-rated movie in the theater. But when it came on HBO, I must have seen it about 10 times. And Ripley was a revelation. She was one of the first really powerful, capable female characters I'd ever seen. So it made a big impression on me when I was a kid, and I still have a lot of love for it, even though it is very unnerving and gruesome in parts, and you do in slasher film style, you do see characters picked off one by one. Although to be fair, at least they're given comparatively quick deaths. The movie doesn't linger over their pain like torture porn. So, well worth a look if you haven't seen it, but this is one that has gotten its due. This one got its due when it was released, and admiration for it has only grown since then. It's a classic of the genre, science fiction horror, at number 7, Alien. Now at number 6 is one that a lot of people might not have heard of, and that is a Swedish film called Haxan, subtitled Witchcraft Through the Ages. And this is actually a documentary. It documents the superstitions surrounding witches and witchcraft and the history of those superstitions, the history of stories of witches and persecutions of witches, and it's all filmed in marvelous style. So you come away from this movie both fascinated, captivated, and horrified by the visuals, but also having learned a little something. And movies like this give me ideas for stories I might want to write about. So it has a special place in my heart for that reason. So it is available on YouTube. And again, another silent movie visual feast. So if you're up for that kind of thing, definitely seek this one out. The 5th film. Of all the movies on this list, my number 5 pick is probably the one with the least amount of humor. No humor almost anywhere at any time. I can't remember a moment where there was even an awkward laugh in this film. And it is 1980's haunted house drama The Changeling, starring George C. Scott, Melvin Douglas, and Trish Vanderveer. And when I say this film has no humor, I'm really not saying that like it's a bad thing, because this is not a film where humor would have made any sense. It just kind of stands out for that reason. It's like most of the movies on this list have some sort of humor somewhere. And this one is just very dark, very atmospheric, but it tells a story of grief. The main character, the George C. Scott character, gives probably his most sensitive performance as a grieving widower. He loses his wife and child, and we see it happen. It's not told about off screen. We don't start right after this moment. No, we actually see it, and it's horrifying. He loses his wife and child in a freak accident. And In the rest of the film, we see him cope with their loss while dealing with a mystery involving the ghost of a child. The ghost of a child, quote, lives or haunts in the attic of a house that he has bought. And the house is actually beautifully designed. It's a set, not an actual house. But it's a story of grief resolving itself, coming to some sort of resolution, and it's also a story of justice done. Because what was done to this child was monstrous, unforgivable, and it ends up being the Melvin Douglas character who has to pay the price, even though in his way, he's actually sort of a secondary victim. So you have, as George C. Scott will later say, a murder for profit. A man murders his own son so that he can gain an inheritance which he would lose if his sickly son were to die before he reached adulthood. And just how he manages to get away with this, it's extremely disturbing. Our ghost is angry, and he has every right to be so. But as the movie goes on, you develop a rapport. You care about this man, the George C. Scott character. You want to see him fight his way through this. You want to see him come out on top. And the relationship that develops between him and Trish Vanderveer is really very sweet, and it's carefully developed because she is not his love interest. At the very end of the movie, it looks as if their relationship might develop that way later on, but during the actual film, she is just the one person within this community that he feels like he can trust, that he can count on. And she becomes his partner in unraveling this mystery. Their friendship is the emotional core of the movie because it shows him being willing to, well, to invest his emotions again, to make an emotional investment, even though he has been kicked in the stomach so hard. It's a wonder. Well, brings to mind a lyric from the musical Hamilton in a song called It's Quiet Uptown. He is going through the unimaginable. The character in this movie is definitely going through the unimaginable. And the movie is how he gets justice for this ghost and how he starts to come out the other side. So, a tremendously moving film. This movie will give you all the feels. So, that's my number 5 pick, The Changeling. Now, almost out of time for this particular video, but I'll be right back with my top 4. And again, thank you for following me through all of this, and I'll see you in a bit.